Close your eyes and imagine this. You're holding a watch that doesn't tick in seconds but in centuries. What if you could turn it backward and not just to yesterday but to the dawn of time? From Einstein's equations to impossible paradoxes, humanity has always dreamed of escaping the river of time. Tonight, as you drift to sleep, let's explore that dream. Softly, slowly, Myron, uncover how science, history, and imagination have tried to make time travel real. In the stillness before dawn, when the first light has not yet brushed the horizon, there is a silence that feels older than memory itself. It is the kind of silence that makes you wonder what the world was like before anyone thought to name a single moment. Before time, as we know it, began to flow. Long before clocks and calendars, before mathematics and astronomy, humanity gazed upward and tried to understand the patterns written across the sky. The slow turn of the stars, the waxing and waning of the moon, the swelling and retreat of the tides, all of them whispered that the universe moved with rhythm. People saw that the sun returned every morning, and the seasons followed one another with patient certainty. From these repetitions came the first sense of order, the first hint that time was not chaos but a kind of living pattern, woven, perhaps by unseen hands. For the ancient Egyptians, those unseen hands belonged to gods. In their desert land, where the sun meant both life and death, time was not a straight road but the eternal rising and setting of Ra, the solar god. Each morning Ra emerged from the eastern horizon, sailing his golden bark across the sky, and each night he descended into the underworld to battle the serpent Apophis, embodiment of darkness and disorder. When he triumphed at dawn, the world was born anew. To the Egyptians, this endless repetition was the heartbeat of existence. Every day was the same cosmic story told again, light defeating darkness, order reclaiming chaos. They did not fear the cycle. They depended on it. The Nile flooded, the crops grew, the stars returned to their places. Time to them was sacred rhythm. Even death itself was not an end but a continuation, a journey through the night to rise again with Ra. Their tombs and temples were built as instruments of eternity, ensuring that the soul could join the divine cycle and never fall outside its turning. Far to the north and west, along the shores of the Aegean Sea, another civilization watched the same sun but told different stories. The ancient Greeks were captivated by change. The way youth became age, the way empires rose and fell, the way seasons seemed to die only to be reborn. To them time was governed by gods too, but gods with human faces and emotions. Kronos, the ancient titan of time, was sometimes imagined as a vast, devouring force, a reminder that everything born from time must eventually return to it. Yet there was another face of time among the Greeks. Kairos, the opportune moment, the instant in which everything could change. Where Kronos was endless, Kairos was fleeting, a spark that appeared and vanished in the same breath. Between them lay the mystery of existence, time as both infinite and immediate. The Greeks built myths around that tension. Persephone's descent into the underworld each year symbolized death and rebirth. Her return marked spring, proof that life's cycle would always resume. To walk through ancient Greece was to walk among reminders of time's dual nature. The philosophers wrote of it endlessly. Heraclitus said, "Everything flows." Parmenides argued that change was an illusion. Between their words, a truth emerged that would echo for millennia. Time was not a simple line stretching forward. It was something alive, circling back upon itself, repeating in patterns as intricate as the mosaics that lined their temples. Across an ocean and centuries apart, the Maya of Central America watched the heavens with equal reverence. They did not merely observe time. They counted it, calculated it, shaped it into cycles that interlocked like gears of an immense celestial machine. For them, Each moment carried divine significance connected to gods who ruled the turning of the ages. The calendar round, the long count, the Hab and Tzolk'in calendars, all were attempts to understand time's vast body, not as something rushing forward but as something breathing, pulsing and recurring. In the Mayan world, the universe was reborn again and again. Each era had its own creation, destruction, and renewal. The passing of days was sacred performance, festivals marking solstices, ceremonies to honor the gods who ensured the sun's return. The people believed that to keep these rituals was to help the world continue its rhythm. To neglect them would be to invite stillness, a terrible fate, for if time stopped moving, existence itself might unravel. Their myth of the hero twins told of a journey into the underworld, a confrontation with death, and a triumphant return to the surface as the sun and the moon. It was another echo of the eternal circle, the idea that life and death are not opposites but partners in an endless dance. In this view, the world was not aging. It was cycling, endlessly renewed, endlessly familiar. Imagine standing beneath a Mayan night sky, where stars hung like polished stones and the jungle hummed with quiet life. The priests raised their eyes to Venus, the morning star, tracing its movements with astonishing precision. Each reappearance marked the start of a new count, a new rhythm in the cosmic music. Theirs was a science of devotion, blending mathematics and myth until the two became inseparable. Even far beyond the boundaries of great empires, among nomadic peoples and early tribes, similar ideas took root. In the frozen north, the aurora danced in patterns that returned each season. In tropical islands, the tides obeyed the moon's ancient pull. Everywhere, people learned to predict the future not by chance but by memory. The world they saw was not random, it repeated. For these early minds, time's repetition was not a trap but a promise. What had happened would happen again. The storms would pass, the rains would come, the hunt would return. This cyclical understanding brought comfort and order to lives bound by uncertainty. In their stories, gods died and were resurrected. Winters ended in spring and darkness always yielded to light. Close your eyes and picture such a world, one without hours or minutes, where the only clock is the sun's slow drift and the heartbeat of the seasons. There is no anxiety about deadlines, no fear of wasting time because time cannot be wasted. It only circles back, offering itself again and again. When a farmer planted his crops, he did so not in hope of a unique future, but in harmony with the same turning that his ancestors had followed. When a mother told her child a myth about the dawn, she was not recounting history but participating in it, keeping alive the eternal story of renewal. Every act, from lighting a fire to burying the dead, fit within that circular rhythm. To live within such a cycle was to live close to the heartbeat of nature itself. Time was not a ladder to climb, it was a wheel to turn. Its motion was gentle, predictable, and divine, and so, from the deserts of Egypt to the islands of Greece, from the jungles of Central America to the endless plains where nomads followed the stars, humanity began to weave its understanding of existence. These were the first threads in the vast fabric we now call history. Weaving gods and mortal hands alike worked upon it, spinning days into years, years into stories. Each culture told its own version of creation and return, yet all agreed on one thing, that time was alive, an endless, breathing circle upon which all things depended. As centuries unfolded, humanity's awareness of time deepened. The stories of gods and cycles did not fade. They evolved into the rhythms of daily life. The first civilizations began to realize that if time had a pattern, it could be understood. And if it could be understood, perhaps it could be measured. The Nile, the Tigris, the Euphrates, the Indus, these rivers became humanity's first calendars. Their floods and retreats came in predictable turns, teaching farmers when to plant, when to harvest, and when to wait. Out of this patient observation grew the earliest record keepers, people who marked not just the passage of seasons, but the recurrence of the stars themselves. In Mesopotamia, priests climbed tall ziggurats to watch the heavens. The night sky was their text and they read it with reverence. The movements of planets, the birth of new stars, the phases of the moon, all seemed to follow laws older than humankind. Each event was written into clay tablets as both science and prophecy. When a certain constellation rose in the east, it meant the floods would soon come. When a comet streaked across the heavens, it was a message from the gods, perhaps warning or blessing the empire below. From these observations, time took on a new dimension. It was no longer only a sacred circle, but also a tool. People began to count its cycles, to break it into smaller pieces that could be named and shared. A day, once just sunrise to sunrise, became a measurable unit. Months were tied to the moon's rhythm, years to the return of the stars. In the cities of Sumer and Babylon, time itself became a mark of civilization. Clay tablets recorded not just kings and battles, but lunar eclipses, solstices, and harvests. The priests, half astronomers, half mathematicians, began to build the idea that the universe could be predicted. The stars might still belong to the gods, but their patterns could be read by humankind. To the west, in Egypt, the same impulse shaped stone into eternity. The great temples of Karnak and Abu Simbel were not placed at random. Their very walls aligned with the rising sun on specific days of the year. The builders understood that if the gods moved in cycles, their monuments must move with them. Each dawn that spilled light through the temple's corridors was a confirmation that order, what they called Ma'at, still ruled the world. Even their calendars were sacred architecture. The Egyptians divided the year into 365 days long before many others did, guided by the heliacal rising of Sirius, the bright star that heralded the Nile's flood. Its reappearance marked renewal, a divine reminder that time was both predictable and benevolent. Every flood meant rebirth. Every rebirth proved the gods were faithful. As the world's empires grew, so too did their hunger to measure and master time. The Babylonians divided the hour into 60 minutes, the minute into 60 seconds, a system that still shapes our clocks today. They saw harmony in that number, a mathematical reflection of cosmic order. Their sexagesimal system echoed their belief that the heavens, with their sweeping arcs and perfect ratios, followed divine geometry. In the Indus Valley, time took a quieter form. There, the rhythm of monsoons and moon phases became intertwined with meditation and ritual. The people measured not only the length of the year, but the cycles of the human spirit. For them, time was not merely a way to organize the outer world. It was a mirror of the inner one. Life, death, and rebirth formed a continuous stream, the soul passing through ages just as rivers pass through lands. The idea of reincarnation, of returning to life again and again, arose naturally from this view. As trade routes connected distant lands, ideas about time began to travel as well. The Greeks learned from the Babylonians astronomy. The Persians carried Egyptian calendars eastward. Indian philosophies about cyclical ages influenced the later concept of world eras in both Buddhist and Western thought. Across continents, humans were beginning to agree on something profound, that time, however mysterious, was ordered. And yet, even as it was measured, it remained deeply human. The act of marking a solstice, of lighting a fire to welcome the sun's return, was never purely scientific. It was emotional, spiritual. Time was measured because it mattered. It shaped the harvest, the birth of children, the building of temples, the rise and fall of kings. Every culture began to weave rituals around its understanding of time's motion. In Mesopotamia, the new year was celebrated as the return of creation itself, when Marduk defeated the forces of chaos. The people reenacted that victory every year to keep the cosmos in balance. In Egypt, the festival of Opet renewed the bond between the pharaoh and the gods, ensuring that divine order would continue. The Greeks, with their love of theater, expressed time cycles through tragedy and rebirth, Dionysus dying and returning, seasons repeating, fate unfolding as it always must. The Mayans performed ceremonies timed precisely to celestial events, believing that the universe itself required human participation to keep turning. As centuries passed, humans began to build devices that could hold this rhythm in physical form, sundials first, marking the movement of shadows, then water clocks, simple, elegant vessels that dripped at a steady pace, turning time into something you could see and hear. Each drop was a moment lost, but also a promise. There would always be another. In these small inventions lay something profound. For the first time, people could separate time from the heavens, could bring it down to earth. It no longer existed only in myth or sky, but in everyday life. Time could be carried, measured, owned. It could be shared among farmers, merchants, rulers. It became the invisible fabric that held society together. But even as time grew measurable, it never lost its mystery. The philosophers of Greece still asked where it began. Did it exist before the world? Would it end? Plato imagined it as a moving image of eternity, a shadow of something perfect. Aristotle saw it as the measure of change, inseparable from motion itself. These ideas, though abstract, shaped the way civilizations thought about their place in the cosmos. If time was eternal, then humanity was part of an endless story. If it was finite, then each life had urgency, a brief spark in a vast dark. Both ideas could be found side by side in the temples, in the calendars, in the hearts of those who watched the stars. By the time the Roman Empire rose, time had become both sacred and bureaucratic. The Romans used calendars to rule their vast territories, scheduling festivals, taxes, and military campaigns. They even adjusted time for politics, adding or subtracting days from months to serve their needs. Julius Caesar's reform of the calendar, the Julian system, was less a gesture of science than of power, the empire itself deciding how long a year should be. And yet, beneath the administration and order, the old reverence still lingered. The festivals of Saturnalia, celebrating the god of the Golden Age, looked back to a mythical time when the world was young and harmonious. Even in their most structured society, people still dreamed of time as something that could circle back, that the lost perfection might return. Humanity's relationship with time was becoming more complex, half divine, half practical. The cycles of myth remained, but the straight line of progress was beginning to appear. People still honored the gods who turned the heavens, but they were also beginning to see their own power to chart, predict, and perhaps one day control the flow of time itself. The circle had not yet broken, but cracks were forming in its edges. The ancient weavers who once told stories of eternal return had given birth to a new kind of thinking, one that would lead to history, science, and eventually to the question that would define the modern age. Does time move in circles, or does it move forever forward? As the line between myth and measurement grew thinner, something subtle began to change in the human imagination. The earliest storytellers had seen time as a circle, but the builders of cities and empires began to sense that their own actions could push it forward. The cycle was still sacred, yet now there was the idea of progress, of moving from past to future, leaving behind a trace that would not return in quite the same way. It may have begun with writing itself. When symbols on clay recorded a harvest, a treaty, a poem, those marks preserved a single moment forever. The circle broke just a little. A person could look back and read what had once been, even after the voices that spoke it were gone. History was born, and with it came a new kind of time, the time of memory. This shift was quiet but immense. In Egypt, chronicles began to list dynasties in order. In China, the great historians wrote of ruling houses that rose and fell like waves. The Hebrews told of a beginning, a creation, and a journey toward an ultimate promise, a line stretching from Genesis to destiny. The circular festivals remained, but underneath them ran a growing sense that humanity was traveling somewhere new. Still, the echo of the ancient rhythm never vanished. Every temple bell, every festival dance, every story of death and renewal reminded people that they belonged to something repeating and vast. The two visions of time, the circle and the line, coexisted like two melodies played together. One offered comfort, the other purpose. In the Far East, Chinese scholars described the universe as a balance of cycles, but their dynastic historians wrote linear accounts of cause and consequence. In India, cosmic ages known as yugas stretched across eons, yet each life within them was a single, unrepeatable path of karma. In the West, the idea of divine creation gave the future a destination. A world that began once might also end once. The philosophers continued to ask what time truly was. Some said it flowed from the motion of the stars. Others said it lived only in the mind. They watched shadows drift across sundials and wondered if those shadows measured time, or if time was simply the feeling of their movement. In their questions lay the seed of science itself, an attempt not only to observe the pattern but to understand its nature. Centuries later, that seed would bloom into the great discoveries of astronomy. Observers noticed that the heavens were not fixed but changing. Comets returned, planets wandered, and even the pole star drifted. The circle was real, but it was made of countless smaller motions, each with its own rhythm. The heavens themselves aged. The universe was not eternal perfection. It was living time. As civilizations expanded, they began to synchronize their calendars, linking distant lands through shared reckoning. A sailor leaving Alexandria could know the phase of the moon in far Carthage. A scholar in Baghdad could calculate an eclipse visible in distant China. The measurement of time became the measure of connection, a web stretching over the world. Yet every night when the lamps dimmed and silence returned, people still felt the pulse of the old myth. The passing of a year, the return of spring, the birth of a child, all echoed that first understanding, that existence renews itself. The farmer still watched the same stars that guided his ancestors. The circle endured within the line. Imagine walking through one of those ancient cities at twilight. The markets have closed, the air cools, and the first stars appear. Somewhere a priest climbs the temple steps to mark the setting of the sun. Farther away, a scribe seals a tablet with the date, ensuring that this day will not be lost. Between them lies the full story of human time, ritual and record, cycle and sequence, myth and memory, all woven together. Over centuries, this weaving continued. In monasteries and observatories, scholars refined calendars to track the equinoxes with greater precision. In villages, people rang bells to call the hours of prayer. Each improvement was a thread added to the great tapestry, the fabric of time that humans were learning not just to watch, but to shape. Then, much later, the mechanical clock arrived. Gears replaced water and sand. The flow of time, once as soft as the sun's motion, began to tick with perfect regularity. For the first time, every moment could be divided into smaller and smaller parts, each identical to the next. Time became uniform, measurable, unstoppable. The ancient wheel had been forged into a machine, but even that precision could not erase what came before. Deep within the human spirit, the memory of cyclical time persisted. It lives in the rhythm of the heart, in the phases of the moon, in the quiet knowledge that every ending hides a beginning. When winter comes, we know spring will follow. When the night deepens, we wait for dawn. The circle still turns beneath the straight line. To look back on those first weavers, the Egyptians who followed Ra's sunboat, the Greeks who watched the seasons die and return, the Maya who counted the ages of the world, is to see the roots of our own perception. Their myths were not errors. They were poetry written before science, intuition sensing truths that equations would later describe. The universe does move in cycles. Stars are born and die. Galaxies spiral, atoms vibrate in repeating patterns. Even time itself, according to modern physics, might loop and bend in ways the ancients would have found familiar. And so, as we drift through our own lives, measured by digital clocks and atomic precision, we remain heirs to both visions. Time is our path and our circle, our story and our silence. We mark it with calendars and rituals, with birthdays and New Year's, with memories that fold back upon themselves. When we pause to watch the sunset, we are doing what the first astronomer did on a distant riverbank thousands of years ago, acknowledging the moment when one day ends and another begins, a reminder that we live inside a pattern larger than ourselves. Now, imagine standing once more in that primal stillness before dawn. The air is cool, the horizon dimly silvered. Somewhere unseen, the first bird calls. You can feel the planet turning slowly, silently, carrying you with it through the endless motion of ages. The myths of the past, the mathematics of the present, they are not separate. They are the same attempt to touch the rhythm that guides everything. Time is not a straight road or a perfect circle. It is a living fabric woven of both. Each life, each story, each heartbeat is a thread crossing others, creating patterns too vast to see. The ancients felt this truth in their bones, and though we now speak of seconds and centuries, the feeling remains. You are part of that same weave. The world you know was stitched from moments that began long before you, and when your own thread fades, the pattern will continue. The rivers will rise, the stars will return, and somewhere another voice will tell these same stories, watching time repeat, season after season. Before there were clocks or calendars, there was only the turning world itself. The first people who looked up at the night sky must have sensed that its slow changes carried a hidden rhythm. They watched the moon grow and shrink, saw constellations rise in one season and vanish in another, and began to understand that the universe was not chaos. It moved to a pattern. That realization was the beginning of all timekeeping. At first, this pattern was felt more than measured. A hunter knew when the herds would migrate by the slant of the sun. Farmers learned that when certain stars returned to the eastern horizon, the rains would soon arrive. Life followed these signs instinctively. No one needed a number to know when to act. But as settlements grew into villages and villages into cities, memory alone could no longer guide everyone. The rhythm of the world needed to be shared, not just remembered, so people began to mark time in stone and shadow. The earliest calendars were not books but monuments, rings of stones that framed the sunrise on a particular day, or mounds aligned to the solstice. These structures, scattered across continents, show that long before writing, humans were already trying to fix the pulse of the sky into something solid. Each alignment told a story. When to sow, when to harvest, when to gather and celebrate. The heavens were the first clock, and the earth became its face. In ancient Egypt, priests watched the daily journey of the sun with devotion. The rising and setting of Ra was both a divine act and a measure of life itself. They built tall obelisks to cast long, narrow shadows that crept slowly across marked stones. These were among the first sundials, simple yet astonishing instruments that turned sunlight into hours. As the shadow shortened at noon and lengthened toward evening, The Egyptians could divide the day into parts, giving structure to what once flowed endlessly. But sundials could not follow the night, and so people sought another way. The Babylonians and Persians discovered that water could keep time. They filled vessels with narrow holes near the bottom, letting liquid drip at a steady pace. Each drop marked a heartbeat of the universe. By carving lines inside the bowls, they learned how long it took to empty, how many drips made an hour. These water clocks, called clepsydrae, whispered softly in temples and courts, measuring the length of prayers, speeches, and judgments. Time had found a voice, gentle, continuous, never sleeping. Civilizations far apart made their own versions. In China, bronze water clocks stood in palaces, their flow regulated by intricate gears and floats. In Greece, engineers refined them with siphons and valves, turning a simple dripping vessel into a precision instrument. Every improvement was a step toward mastery, a way to give rhythm to human life. What began as observation of the heavens was becoming technology. Calendars, too, became more exact. The Egyptians noticed that the star Sirius reappeared each year just before the Nile flooded. That event became the anchor of their 365-day calendar, dividing the year into 12 months of 30 days, with 5 extra days for the birthdays of their gods. The Babylonians tied their months to the moon and added days to keep in step with the seasons. The Mayans in the distant Americas built interlocking cycles so complex that they could predict eclipses centuries in advance. Everywhere, people were teaching themselves to read the pattern of the cosmos, not as myth but as measurement. To live by measured time was to live with new precision. Farmers planted not by instinct but by count. Sailors navigated by predictable stars. Priests could declare the moment of dawn prayers to the heartbeat. Time had become a tool, a way to organize the world. But in gaining control, humanity also gained a new awareness. Time could now be lost, stolen, or wasted. What had once been an endless flow now had boundaries. The Romans carried sundials across their empire, placing them in marketplaces and courtyards so citizens could mark the hours together. The shadow on stone united entire cities under one rhythm, yet they also learned how imperfect these instruments were. Shadows change with latitude. A dial built for Rome told the wrong time in Athens. The sun, faithful yet uneven, made clear that even the most careful human measure was only an approximation of the heavens' true pace. Still, the desire to refine grew stronger. The ancients added gears and weights to their water clocks, turning dripping bowls into small mechanical wonders. By the time of the early Middle Ages, inventors across Asia and the Islamic world were crafting elaborate astronomical clocks powered by water, sand, and even mercury. They could show the motion of planets, phases of the moon, and the passage of hours, all moving in graceful harmony. Watching one was like watching the universe itself in miniature, each generation built upon the last, seeking greater regularity. The ticking heart of time, once the distant rhythm of stars, began to live inside machines. The first true mechanical clock appeared in Europe around the 13th century. Heavy weights pulled on wheels that turned with measured restraint, released by an escapement that allowed each motion to occur in perfect sequence. For the first time, time was not poured or burned. It was ticked, byte by byte, into being. Those early clocks were massive structures installed in church towers, ringing bells to mark the hours. People heard time echo across valleys and through city streets. It was a new kind of sound, both reassuring and commanding. The bell told farmers when to stop their labor, monks when to pray, merchants when to open their stalls. Time had become a master as well as a servant. Imagine standing in a medieval town at dusk, the air cool, smoke rising from hearths. From the cathedral tower comes a slow series of chimes, each one rolling through the rooftops. For the first time in human history, everyone hears the same moment together. No longer does each family watch its own shadow or water clock. The whole community moves to one heartbeat. That harmony reshaped society. It made schedules possible, commerce efficient, prayer unified. It also made people aware of time's passage in a way their ancestors had never felt. The tick and chime reminded them constantly that moments were slipping away. The invention of the mechanical clock marked a quiet revolution. It was not only a triumph of engineering, it was a shift in consciousness. The universe, once observed from the outside, could now be imitated by human hands. The clockmaker became a kind of creator, constructing a model of the cosmos in brass and iron. The escapement mechanism, the delicate device that releases energy in equal steps, mirrored the pulse of the stars themselves. Every turn of the gear was a symbol of the order hidden in chaos. And so, as centuries passed, the world learned to live by machines of time. Monasteries divided prayers into canonical hours. Sailors navigated by marine chronometers. Towns built clock towers taller than their walls, as if proclaiming mastery over the invisible. The rhythm that once belonged to the heavens now beat inside every city, every workshop, every heart. By the time the great cathedrals of Europe began to rise, the clock had become more than a machine. It was a symbol of civilization itself. The towers that once carried bells for worship now carried mechanisms that could divide the day with astonishing precision. Each city competed to build one more elaborate than the last. The faces of these clocks were like mirrors reflecting human ambition, engraved with suns, moons, and zodiac signs, as though the builders hoped to capture the entire sky inside their walls. In Prague, a great astronomical clock was set into the stone of the old town hall, its gears and statues performing a quiet play every hour. In Strasbourg, the cathedral clock displayed not just the time, but the movements of the planets and the ages of the world. The people gathered beneath these machines in awe, for they represented more than metal and motion. They were humanity's promise that order could be found within mystery. Inside monasteries, the rhythm of the bell shaped every life. Monks rose at fixed hours to chant prayers, not when the sun appeared, but when the mechanism declared the moment had arrived. The steady marking of hours became a kind of discipline, reminding everyone that life itself was finite and measurable. Time, once a flowing river, had become a path of stepping stones, and each stone had a name. As cities grew and trade flourished, timekeeping escaped the cloister and entered the marketplace. Merchants depended on precise hours to open shops and close deals. Sailors setting out on long voyages required exact measurements to calculate distance and longitude. In port towns, bell towers chimed across the harbor, synchronizing the movement of ships. The world was beginning to coordinate itself, an invisible web of hours binding people across continents. Yet with this newfound precision came anxiety. To measure time so finely was also to feel its loss more keenly. A late bell could delay a prayer. A missed hour could cost a fortune. The same invention that gave humanity control also reminded it of limitation. Philosophers wrote of the fleeting instant. Poets mourned the vanishing moment. Time had become a presence one could almost hear breathing behind every task. In homes and workshops, smaller versions of the great clocks began to appear. The art of horology, clockmaking, spread rapidly through Europe. Craftsmen learned to shape springs of steel that could store energy without the need for heavy weights. With this discovery came portability. Clocks could move from towers to tables, from tables to pockets. The invention of the mainspring transformed timekeeping from a civic spectacle into a private companion. Imagine a craftsman's workshop in the 16th century. The room is dim, lit only by the light that falls across a wooden bench. Tiny gears gleam like fragments of stars. The master bends over his work, adjusting the tension of a spring no thicker than a strand of hair. He listens to the faint click of escapement teeth, counting silently as they release one by one. In that small rhythm, he hears the same order that guides the heavens. To him, each clock is not just an object, it is a map of time itself. These pocket-sized marvels spread among nobles and travelers, symbols of refinement and intellect. A watch was a statement that one could command time even while moving through the world. They were treasured heirlooms, passed from generation to generation, their ticking a whisper of continuity across centuries. The wealthy wore them as jewelry, but the sound inside was universal. The same steady heart that had once echoed from cathedral towers. By the 17th century, scientific curiosity joined the art of clockmaking. The age of discovery demanded greater accuracy. Astronomers like Galileo studied the swinging motion of pendulums and found that their rhythm remained constant regardless of how wide the swing. This insight led to the creation of pendulum clocks, whose accuracy surpassed all previous designs. When Christian Huygens built the first practical pendulum clock in 1656, the world entered an era where seconds could be trusted as much as hours once were. In observatories and universities, the ticking of precise instruments guided discoveries that would redefine the cosmos. The motions of planets were plotted with increasing exactness. The laws of gravity and motion could be tested against the unwavering beat of the clock. Timekeeping and science grew inseparable. Each improvement in one field refined the other. The clock had become a tool not only for daily life, but for understanding the universe itself. But even as knowledge expanded, the human relationship with time grew more complex. The mechanical regularity that once seemed divine now demanded obedience. Workers in emerging factories were expected to arrive by the hour, to labor according to schedules set by clocks hanging on walls. Bells that had once called to prayer now summoned to production. The rhythm of machinery merged with the rhythm of time, and the harmony that had once felt natural began to sound relentless. Still, there was beauty in this order. The same ticking that governed industry also inspired music, poetry, and art. Composers wrote pieces that mimicked the pulse of the clock, finding in its repetition a kind of calm. Writers described the watchmaker as a philosopher, someone who glimpsed eternity in motion. To build a clock was to hold the mystery of the cosmos in miniature, a reminder that everything from stars to seconds moved by pattern. As exploration expanded across oceans, portable timekeeping became essential for navigation. The challenge of determining longitude, knowing how far east or west a ship had sailed, depended entirely on measuring time accurately at sea. Clocks. On land could be stable, but at sea they faced storms, humidity, and motion. Many tried and failed to create a marine chronometer that could endure such conditions. It was John Harrison, a self-taught English carpenter, who finally solved the problem in the 18th century. His invention, a series of remarkably precise sea clocks, allowed sailors to determine their position anywhere on Earth. For the first time, the entire globe could be mapped with confidence. The ocean, once vast and uncertain, was tamed by the steady tick of a handmade device no larger than a book. Humanity had measured its world not by stars alone, but by time itself. The success of Harrison's chronometers marked another quiet turning point. Time was no longer a local phenomenon tied to church bells or city towers. It was universal. As ships carried their clocks from one port to another, the rhythm of the world began to synchronize. The heartbeat of civilization expanded across oceans, a single tempo uniting distant shores. In that age, each tick of the clock carried both pride and humility. It represented human ingenuity, the ability to capture the abstract in brass and spring, but it also reminded its listeners that every tick was a moment gone, never to return. To hold a watch was to hold a fragment of mortality itself, precise, unstoppable, endlessly repeating. And yet, beneath the awareness of loss, there was comfort. The predictability of the mechanism gave people a sense of order in an uncertain world. The universe might be vast and incomprehensible, but the small rhythm in one's pocket could make it feel knowable. The clock became a bridge between chaos and calm, between the infinity of stars and the brevity of human life. By the dawn of the 19th century, the world no longer merely followed time. It was driven by it. The ticking of clocks that once echoed from church towers now pulsed from every factory wall, railway station, and household mantel. The Industrial Revolution transformed timekeeping from an art into an expectation. Machines demanded precision. Workers were organized by shifts. Trains ran to exact schedules measured not in seasons or hours, but in minutes and seconds. Humanity had entered the age of mechanical rhythm. The steam engine became a symbol of progress, but behind every whistle and piston was the beat of the clock. The coordination of trains across nations required something new: standardized time. Before railways, each town kept its own local time based on the position of the sun. Noon in one city might be 12 minutes later in another, but with trains crossing distances in hours, those differences became chaos. A passenger could miss a departure simply by reading a local clock. To solve this, countries established national time standards. Britain, leading the industrial world, adopted Greenwich Mean Time, setting the pattern for the rest of the globe. Railway stations synchronized their clocks. Telegraph lines transmitted time signals across borders. For the first time in history, distant cities agreed upon a single shared moment. The heartbeat of humanity became unified, measured from a single line on a map. It was a triumph of coordination, but also a quiet surrender. Local traditions that once followed the turning sun now yielded to invisible wires carrying an agreed rhythm. Noon was no longer the warmest part of the day. It was when the signal declared it so. The sky still moved as it always had, but human life now followed an artificial tempo. The world had begun to run not on sunlight but on clocks. In homes, timekeeping became personal and familiar. Mantel clocks ticked beside the hearth, their pendulums swaying like gentle metronomes of domestic life. Families gathered by their rhythm, marking meals, rest, and conversation. In these moments, the mechanical heartbeat was no longer a symbol of control but of comfort, a reminder that amid the rushing modern world, there was order. Each swing of the pendulum, each small chime, connected people to something steady and enduring. As science advanced, the quest for accuracy grew even more intense. Engineers and physicists began to measure time with extraordinary precision, refining pendulums, adjusting for temperature and pressure, and experimenting with new materials. In 1927, the first quartz clock appeared, using the vibration of a crystal to mark seconds with near-perfect consistency. Gone were the wheels and springs of earlier centuries. Time had entered the age of vibration and electricity. The quartz revolution changed everything. Suddenly, the precision once found only in observatories could sit on a wrist. The hum of the quartz oscillator was silent yet exact, a rhythm so steady that it made mechanical ticking seem almost human by comparison. Watches no longer needed to be wound. They hummed ceaselessly, powered by batteries that seemed to hold time itself captive. Humanity had created a keeper of moments that never tired, never erred, never slept. And yet, even as time became more precise, it also became less personal. The comforting tick and tock that once filled homes gave way to silent displays and glowing numbers. The passage of seconds no longer had sound. It was seen rather than heard. Time became invisible again, just as it had been in the beginning when only the stars revealed its motion. By the mid-20th century, atomic clocks were born. These machines measured time not by pendulums or crystals, but by the vibrations of atoms themselves. In each cesium atom, electrons jump between energy levels with absolute regularity, producing a frequency so constant that it could define the very length of a second. When the world adopted the atomic standard in 1967, the definition of time became a matter of quantum precision. Humanity had reached the limit of measurement, touching the invisible pulse of the universe itself. From ancient shadows to atomic vibrations, the journey of timekeeping had come full circle. What began with people watching the heavens now ended with them recreating the heavens' precision inside laboratories. The sun, moon, and stars were no longer our only guides. The universe's rhythm now lived in machines smaller than the human hand. As the 20th century gave way to the digital age, time expanded beyond the physical once more. Satellites orbiting the Earth carried atomic clocks to keep GPS systems aligned, allowing people to locate themselves anywhere on the planet to within a heartbeat of accuracy. The synchronization that began with railway lines now stretched across continents, through fiber optic cables and wireless networks. Every phone, every computer, every heartbeat of the modern world pulses to the same unseen rhythm, coordinated by the ticking of atoms high above the clouds. But amidst this precision, a strange nostalgia lingers. The more exact our clocks become, the less we seem to feel the flow of time itself. The ancient people who watched the stars saw time in motion, slow, patient, alive. We, surrounded by perfect instruments, experience it as numbers changing on a screen. Time has never been more accurate and yet never more abstract. And still, when one listens closely, perhaps late at night in a quiet room, the echo of history can be heard. A wall clock ticks softly in the dark, each second following the last like a quiet footstep through centuries. That sound carries within it the memory of dripping water in Babylon, the shadow of obelisks on Egyptian stone, the ringing bells of medieval towers, the hum of quartz, the whisper of atoms. Every instrument that ever measured time is contained in that single tick. It is the story of how humanity sought to make sense of the passing moment and found beauty in its regularity. If one could look backward through all those moments, through every tick, chime, drip, and vibration, they would see not a line but a pattern, a great weaving of cause and consequence. Each invention arose from wonder, each refinement from patience, each tick from a desire to understand. The rhythm of timekeeping is, in a way, the rhythm of civilization itself, an echo of our attempt to bring order to the unknown. And so, in the quiet spaces of modern life, when the phone screen glows with the soft certainty of the hour, remember that the number displayed there is not just a measure, it is a heritage. It is the final note in a symphony that began when someone long ago watched the sun slide down a horizon and wondered how long it would be before it rose again. Time still moves with us, indifferent yet intimate. It stretches around stars, bends beneath gravity, and hums within atoms. But for all our instruments and theories, we remain what we have always been, watchers of its passage, listeners to its quiet song. The clocks we build do not trap time. They remind us to cherish it. Every tick you hear is not merely a second lost. It is a heartbeat of history, an echo of every mind that sought to give rhythm to chaos. From the sundial to the satellite, from the drip of water to the pulse of cesium, humanity has never stopped listening for the steady music of existence. And perhaps that is the greatest measure of all, that we keep time not to control it, but to remember that we are part of its endless flow. There are moments in history when one mind looks at the familiar world and sees it entirely anew. The early 20th century was full of discoveries, yet none so quietly revolutionary as the thought that took shape inside a young patent clerk's imagination. Albert Einstein sat at a small desk in Bern, reviewing mechanical designs, but his own thoughts drifted far beyond the ticking clocks he inspected each day. He began to wonder what would happen if he could ride a beam of light. Would time keep its steady rhythm? Would the world look the same? That simple question became the doorway to an entirely new understanding of the universe. For centuries, time and space had been treated as separate things. Space was the stage on which the drama of existence unfolded. Time was the script that moved it forward. The two never touched. But Einstein began to suspect that the stage and the script were, in fact, the same cloth, woven together in ways no one had imagined. He saw that space could not exist without time, and time could not flow without space. They were threads in a single, vast tapestry. In his mind, he pictured the universe as a great fabric, soft, continuous, infinite in all directions. Every star, every planet, every person rested upon that fabric, pressing into it ever so slightly. The more massive an object, the deeper the indentation it made. When a smaller body came near, it followed the curve created by the heavier one. Planets did not circle the sun because an invisible force pulled them. They curved around a dip in the fabric of space and time itself. Gravity was not a rope that tugged. It was geometry, the shape of existence bending around mass. The beauty of this idea was its simplicity. The world that once seemed mechanical suddenly became organic, fluid. The cosmos was not a rigid clockwork, but a living sea in constant motion. Light followed the same rules. It moved along the curves of this fabric, bending when it passed near massive objects. Space could stretch and squeeze. Time could slow and quicken. Everything, from the smallest particle to the farthest galaxy, participated in this cosmic dance. Einstein's theory of relativity revealed something both astonishing and intimate. Time itself is not absolute. It depends on where you are and how fast you move. Two observers standing in different gravitational fields or traveling at different speeds can experience time differently, and both can be right. The steady ticking we rely upon, those seconds we think of as universal, is only an illusion born from our narrow perspective. He explained it with thought experiments. Imagine two clocks, one resting on Earth, another carried by a traveler speeding through space near the speed of light. To the traveler, the seconds seem normal, steady, but when the journey ends and the clocks are compared, the one that moved through space will show fewer ticks. Time for the traveler has run more slowly. This was not philosophy, it was physics. Motion itself could stretch the fabric of time. At first, few could believe it. How could time, that most constant companion of human life, bend and twist? But experiments would soon confirm what imagination first revealed. When scientists measured the orbits of planets, the bending of starlight and the decay of particles in motion, they saw the unmistakable signature of Einstein's equations. The universe truly behaved like a flexible sheet, curved by mass and energy. It is a humbling vision. Imagine space not as emptiness but as something tangible, an invisible ocean in which every atom swims. When a massive star drifts across it, ripples spread outward, slow and silent like waves on a pond. These ripples are gravitational waves, distortions in the fabric of space-time itself. They move across the cosmos carrying news of distant collisions and ancient explosions, subtle tremors of creation that reach us billions of years later. For most of history, they were only predicted, never observed. Yet Einstein was certain they existed, whispers from the deep structure of reality. He understood that time, like space, could be shaped by gravity. Near a massive body, a star, a planet, or a black hole, the pull on space-time becomes so intense that time itself slows down. A clock on the surface of a massive world will tick more slowly than one far away in empty space. If you could watch both at once, you would see the lower clock lag behind, as if caught in invisible syrup. The stronger the gravity, the thicker the syrup becomes. This phenomenon, called gravitational time dilation, means that the universe does not share a single rhythm. Each place has its own tempo, defined by the gravity that bathes it. Time in the mountains moves ever so slightly faster than time at the sea. The difference is tiny, fractions of a fraction of a second, but it is real, measurable, and inescapable. Every height, every speed, every mass writes its own measure of duration. The cosmos is a symphony of countless overlapping tempos. Picture yourself standing near a massive star. Its light dazzles the void, yet around it the very structure of reality bends inward. The seconds stretch. Your heartbeat slows. Far away, an observer watching you from the safety of deep space would see you move in slow motion. Your every gesture drawn out, your every blink delayed. But to you, nothing feels different. Your time remains normal because your entire world, your pulse, your thoughts, your breath, has slowed together. It is only in comparison that the difference appears. Relativity is not a trick of perspective. It is the true shape of the universe. The deeper you descend into gravity, the slower your time flows. If you approached a black hole, the strangest object known to exist, you would witness this effect become overwhelming. A black hole is the place where mass has collapsed so tightly that it punches a hole in the fabric of space-time. Its gravity is so intense that not even light can escape its boundary, the event horizon. To you, falling inward, the journey would seem to take only moments, but to a distant observer watching from safety, your fall would appear to slow endlessly. The closer you approach the horizon, the slower you would seem to move until you froze in place, suspended forever at the edge of the abyss. In truth, you would continue inward, but the outside universe would speed beyond your reach. Time itself near the black hole would have nearly stopped. What does it mean, one might wonder, for time to stop? It is not that the universe halts. It is that the relationship between moments becomes distorted beyond comprehension. Inside that darkness, the future and the past may trade places. The direction of time itself may lose meaning. The black hole is not merely an object. It is a wound in the fabric of reality, where our ordinary sense of before and after dissolves. Einstein once said that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubborn illusion. Within his equations, time behaves like another dimension, no more absolute than up or down. The cosmos, he realized, does not flow. It simply is, a vast, four-dimensional landscape of events. Our consciousness moves through it as a traveler moves through space, experiencing moments one after another, giving the illusion of passage. But in the deeper truth of space-time, all moments coexist, every birth, every star, every heartbeat suspended together in the grand geometry of being. When Einstein first shared these ideas, they sounded less like physics and more like poetry. Many of his peers found it difficult to accept that space could curve, or that time itself could stretch. The mathematics were elegant but invisible. There was no instrument delicate enough to see the bending of the universe. For a decade, the theory remained an idea suspended between faith and proof. Then in 1919, the sky itself provided the evidence. That year, during a total solar eclipse, astronomers traveled to the coasts of Africa and South America to photograph the stars that appeared near the darkened sun. According to Einstein's equations, the sun's gravity should bend the light from those stars, shifting their apparent positions by a tiny, measurable amount. When the photographs were compared after months of careful study, the results matched his prediction almost exactly. Light, the purest messenger of the cosmos, had curved as it passed through the sun's invisible well. The universe was indeed flexible. News spread across the world with an almost spiritual thrill. Newspapers proclaimed that Newton had been dethroned and that the universe had changed overnight. In reality, Newton's laws still worked perfectly for the world of everyday motion. Einstein had simply shown that beyond the ordinary, in the vast and the fast, a deeper order prevailed. The notion that time and space could bend was no longer an abstraction. It was part of nature. From that moment, people began to see the cosmos differently. No longer a stage, it became a living fabric in which events were sewn together. Every planet, every beam of light, every human life became a small curve in an immense interconnected design. Even the empty space between galaxies was alive with geometry, a silent structure that held everything in place. Einstein's dream inspired generations of scientists to explore the limits of this fabric. They built telescopes to watch light bend around stars, and detectors to sense the faint ripples of gravitational waves. They sent satellites into orbit with clocks so precise that they could measure the slowing of time just a few kilometers above Earth. Each experiment confirmed the same truth. Time and space are inseparable, partners in an endless dance shaped by mass and motion. Consider the clocks aboard the satellites that guide our daily navigation. High above the surface, they experience slightly weaker gravity than we do on the ground, so their time runs a bit faster. If not corrected, their signals would drift by several microseconds each day, enough to throw every GPS location off by kilometers. Engineers compensate for this difference, quietly applying Einstein's equations to every calculation. Without relativity, the simple act of finding one's way home would fail. The theory that once seemed esoteric now guides airplanes, ships, and smartphones. Proof that even the most abstract ideas can become part of ordinary life. But relativity also carries a quiet message about the nature of perception. It tells us that what we call reality depends on where we stand. To someone moving quickly, distances shrink. To someone standing still, they remain wide. To one observer, two events may appear simultaneous. To another, separated by seconds. Both are right because there is no single universal viewpoint. The universe is democratic. It allows each observer their own version of truth, woven together into one consistent whole. This realization is both humbling and freeing. It reminds us that our experience of time, our sense of now, is local, personal. The universe does not mark a universal present. It holds every moment at once, indifferent to sequence. What we call the future already exists, waiting in the folds of space-time just as the past continues to endure. We move through this landscape like travelers through a vast country, glimpsing one valley at a time. Time feels like motion because consciousness cannot see the whole terrain at once. Einstein himself spoke of this with quiet wonder. When his lifelong friend Michel Besso died, he wrote to the family that Besso had simply gone ahead a little, because for physicists who understand relativity, the distinction between past, present, and future is only an illusion. It was not cold comfort. It was a reflection of his faith in the continuity of existence. In the fabric of space-time, no moment is truly lost. Every laugh, every heartbeat, every flicker of a star still resides somewhere within that grand geometry, eternally connected to all the rest. Imagine for a moment drifting high above the Milky Way, watching the galaxy slowly turn. To your eyes, the spiral arms appear frozen, their stars glowing like grains of dust in amber. Yet within each spark, centuries unfold. Civilizations rise and fade, worlds form and dissolve. All of it exists simultaneously in space-time, each moment a thread in the same tapestry. The slow and the swift, the ancient and the new, they are not separate strands but different angles of the same pattern. The deeper we look, the more flexible this fabric reveals itself to be. Massive stars can bend light into circles, creating rings and arcs called gravitational lenses, cosmic mirages that allow us to see galaxies otherwise hidden. The universe, by curving, becomes its own telescope. And when black holes collide, they send out waves that ripple across billions of light years, shaking the very structure of space-time like the surface of a pond. In 2015, when detectors on Earth finally captured those ripples, humanity heard for the first time the faint echo of a cosmic event that had occurred more than 1 billion years ago. It was as if the universe itself had spoken in its own language, vibrations of time and space. Einstein never lived to see that confirmation, but he had predicted it almost a century earlier. He understood that the geometry of space-time could carry soundless music, that the dance of massive bodies could send tremors through reality itself. In those ripples we hear not only the voice of stars but the enduring whisper of his imagination. Now imagine approaching a black hole, one of the universe's most mysterious objects. Its gravity is immense, so dense that it curves space-time into a funnel that seems to swallow everything. As you draw near, the familiar rhythm of seconds begins to distort. A heartbeat that once measured the passage of time now stretches, elongated by the pull of the abyss. Light itself struggles to escape, bending and twisting along the curves of the cosmic fabric. To a distant observer, your fall would appear to slow, every motion drawn out like liquid molasses, approaching stillness as if frozen forever at the horizon. Inside that darkness, time loses its familiar meaning. Past, present, and future blend together, suspended in a single continuum. The laws that govern ordinary experience, the ticking of a clock, the movement of a hand, the rise of the sun, no longer apply in the same way. Yet within that strange domain you move steadily, a traveler on a path shaped by the curvature of space-time itself. It is both terrifying and awe-inspiring, a reminder of how small human perception is against the grand architecture of the cosmos. Even far from black holes, the universe stretches and curves. Every planet, every star, every galaxy bends the fabric, slightly, creating a web of subtle distortions that travel outward in waves. Light and gravity dance together, weaving the invisible patterns that structure existence. Every orbit traced by a planet, every path of a photon across millions of light years, follows the contours of this unseen landscape. The cosmos is alive in its geometry, and we are quietly carried along by its folds. Einstein's insight also transforms the way we imagine movement and distance. To travel near the speed of light is to journey in a way that ordinary intuition cannot grasp. Time for the traveler slows relative to those left behind. A voyage of decades in motion might pass in mere years for the traveler, a miracle of physics that feels almost like magic. This is not fantasy. It is the reality encoded in the geometry of space-time, waiting to be experienced by anyone bold enough to explore it. Even our own lives are subtly touched by this truth. Clocks on satellites orbiting Earth experience time differently than we do on the ground, ticking slightly faster because gravity is weaker up there. Every GPS signal, every satellite communication relies on this understanding. Einstein's dream is no longer confined to abstract equations. It guides our daily navigation, linking us invisibly to the curvature of space itself. The universe, with all its vastness and complexity, hums through these devices, a quiet rhythm beneath modern life. There is poetry in this vision. Time is no longer a single arrow, moving relentlessly forward for everyone. Instead, it is a stretchable, flexible cloth, responding to mass, motion, and energy. The universe is a grand tapestry, each moment a thread, each star a knot, each life a pattern. We move along our threads, tracing paths that interweave with others, bending with the gravity of distant worlds, stretching and compressing without ever leaving the fabric itself. To imagine falling into a black hole or drifting near a neutron star is to glimpse the ultimate malleability of time. Yet even in these extremes there is a strange serenity. The universe does not rush, it does not panic. It bends and sways, carrying all events within its structure. Time is not lost. It is simply transformed, experienced differently depending on where and how we move. Our perception of it may falter, but the cosmic rhythm endures. We are travelers on this fabric, feeling only our local tempo. Around us, the universe stretches and curves silently. Light traces arcs across interstellar distances. Gravity molds the passage of seconds. Ripples of energy propagate across billions of years. All of it exists simultaneously, folded into the structure of space-time. Every moment ever lived, every star ever burned, every whisper of the cosmos is present in the continuum. And so, in quiet reflection, we realize that time is not a straight line we are forced to follow. It is a living, breathing entity, woven with space, shaped by gravity and stretched across unimaginable distances. To experience it is to float within the fabric itself, to feel the slow elongation of seconds near massive worlds, the near stillness at the edge of a black hole, the gentle curvature beneath the glow of distant stars. We are immersed in it, carried along, part of the weave even as we perceive only a small portion. Einstein's dream was not only a scientific revolution, it was a revelation about our place in the universe. Time is not a rigid master, but a partner in an intricate dance. Space is not empty, it is alive with geometry, sculpting every path we take. And in this understanding we find both humility and comfort. We are small, yes, yet inseparable from the cosmic fabric. Every heartbeat, every thought, every step moves in harmony with the grand stretching rhythm of existence. So let your mind drift. Imagine the universe as a vast cloth, undulating beneath stars and planets. Feel yourself floating gently within it, carried along by gravity's soft pull, bending, but not breaking. Notice the seconds stretching and compressing, a pulse that is at once infinite and intimate. Hear the whisper of space-time in the quiet hum of the cosmos, the echo of light curving around a distant sun, the resonance of gravity waves traveling from ancient collisions. This is the rhythm of the universe, and it is always with us. It is the heartbeat of galaxies, the pulse of black holes, the quiet flow that shapes our days. Einstein taught us to see it, to feel it, to understand that time is neither constant nor cruel. It is flexible, responsive, and profoundly beautiful. Each moment we experience is a gentle bending of the fabric, a trace of our passage in the infinite weave of existence. And when sleep finally draws near, you can imagine lying back in this cosmic cloth, weightless, serene, and carried along by its gentle curvature. Each breath stretches across the dimensions of space and time. Each blink is a moment folding softly into the next. And as you drift, the universe bends with you, welcoming you into its endless fabric where past, present, and future coexist in quiet harmony. Time stretches, curves, and folds, but it is always there, always gentle, always infinite. For as long as humans have imagined the future, they have wondered if it might be possible to journey backward and forward through time. The idea feels both natural and impossible, a gentle tug at the edge of curiosity. Perhaps it begins with dreams, the soft drifting of the mind through yesterday's memories or tomorrow's hopes, a private voyage into moments not yet or no longer present. But beyond dreams, some of the greatest minds have asked, could time itself be traveled, like a river whose currents might carry a vessel both ahead and behind? Einstein's theories, which revealed the flexible fabric of space-time, gave scientists a hint that such journeys might not be pure fantasy. If space and time are intertwined, if massive objects can bend the very flow of time, then perhaps the cosmos allows shortcuts. Wormholes, theorists discovered, could serve as tunnels connecting distant regions of space-time. Imagine 2 points in the universe separated by light years. A wormhole could fold the fabric so that a traveler entering one end emerges instantly at the other, bypassing the normal passage of years and miles. Though none have been found, and though stability remains purely theoretical, the possibility dances softly in equations and imagination alike, even without tunnels. Relativity allows for subtle forms of time travel. Consider a spaceship accelerating to near the speed of light. For those aboard, time slows compared to observers on Earth. A journey that feels like months for the travelers could span decades for everyone they left behind. This is not fantasy, but a gentle consequence of the universe's geometry. In a sense, each voyage through space at extreme speed is also a journey through time, though only into the future. The cosmos permits it in small, careful measures, and humans have begun to glimpse it through precise experiments and satellite clocks that tick differently, depending on altitude and motion. Yet even as physics opens doors, paradoxes appear, shimmering like mirages. Imagine stepping backward in time. Could one meet one's own grandfather long before one's birth? If so, could an action erase your own existence? This is the famous grandfather paradox, a puzzle that teases both logic and imagination. In this gentle thought, time is no longer a straight line. It is a web. Pull on one strand, and all others might shift in unpredictable ways. The paradox is not meant to terrify, but to fascinate. It reminds us that time, once approached as a playground, carries its own rules, delicate and exacting. Another echo of possibility is the butterfly effect. Tiny events in the past can ripple outward, magnifying their influence across years and centuries. A single misstep, a small choice, a whisper of motion can alter an entire future. In time travel thought experiments, this means that even the lightest interaction could create consequences far beyond the traveler's awareness. The paradoxes are gentle warnings, reminders that the fabric of history is resilient, and that it may resist interference even as it bends and flows. Mathematicians and physicists have long entertained these ideas, with the calm curiosity of explorers charting invisible lands. Kurt Gödel proposed solutions to Einstein's equations that allowed closed time-like curves, paths through space-time that loop back on themselves. Kip Thorne calculated the stability conditions for traversable wormholes, showing the theoretical mathematics that could allow safe passage. None of these equations have yet been realized physically, yet they exist as a quiet invitation to imagine, to ponder, to expand the mind into dimensions beyond ordinary experience. Time travel in these formulations is not magic. It is geometry, probability, and physics. It asks us to stretch our perception, to soften the boundaries between past and future, and to imagine the universe as a place where movement is not only through space, but also along the subtle currents of temporal flow. Each equation is like a thread in the larger tapestry, suggesting that even if impossible for now, the cosmos might hold possibilities our senses cannot yet grasp. And so, the mind drifts gently into wonder. We imagine stepping into a wormhole, the world outside stretching and bending, We imagine a ship accelerating so fast that the stars blur into ribbons, each flicker marking a moment that stretches differently than the ones we left behind. We imagine touching a past event softly, as if waving at a memory, and feeling its echoes reach the present like ripples on a quiet pond. The possibilities are endless, but they carry a serenity. They are thoughts, explorations, gentle mental journeys rather than urgent commands to act. In fiction and story, these journeys become vivid landscapes. Travelers slip into loops of time, encountering versions of themselves, witnessing events long vanished, exploring futures yet to unfold. In each narrative, the paradoxes are present but softened. A grandfather untouched, a butterfly fluttering, a choice made lightly. The imagination allows us to probe the contours of time without breaking its underlying rules. Dreams, then, may be tiny, personal forms of time travel, where memory and anticipation carry the mind forward and backward without leaving the bed. This reflection is comforting. Time travel, whether theoretical or dreamlike, reminds us of the elasticity of experience. We live our lives bound to one perspective, yet the universe permits, at least in thought, the stretching and bending of events. Each memory we revisit, each hope we anticipate is a subtle loop of time within the mind. By exploring these thoughts gently, we participate in the dance of past and future without disturbing reality itself. Even the impossibilities offer calm revelation. The grandfather paradox teaches care and consequence. The butterfly effect teaches sensitivity. Wormholes and relativistic journeys teach awe at the immensity and subtlety of the cosmos. To dwell on these ideas is to practice patience and imagination. It is to float softly through a universe where time is not an enemy, but a companion, offering paths that the mind can wander while the body rests. The balance between paradox and possibility is soothing. Nothing rushes. Nothing demands resolution. We may never physically travel backward through centuries, yet the universe allows us to imagine it fully, to explore consequences and connections in a calm, measured way. Science offers hints, mathematics offers bridges, and the mind fills in the spaces with gentle narrative. Each thought is a journey, each moment of curiosity a small form of exploration through the contours of reality. Some of the most intriguing ideas about time travel emerge from the quantum world, where reality behaves differently than our everyday intuition suggests. In the tiny realm of particles, cause and effect are not always clear-cut. Electrons pop into and out of existence. Probabilities govern their paths rather than certainty. Within this strange domain, physicists have imagined loops where events might circle back on themselves without creating paradoxes. These quantum loops, while entirely theoretical, hint at a universe more flexible than we perceive, a cosmos in which time may not be strictly linear, but softly curved and interwoven at microscopic scales. Wormholes, already hinted at by Einstein's general relativity, take on new possibilities when paired with quantum physics. Tiny fluctuations could stabilize or destabilize these cosmic tunnels, allowing brief windows where travel might occur, or perhaps never allowing any passage at all. The equations do not demand feasibility, only consistency, and that consistency, elegant and quiet, is enough to spark wonder. It is a reminder that the universe is not a rigid box but a soft, pliable sheet upon which we trace our imaginations, feeling the texture of potential and limitation simultaneously. Even when the paradoxes loom, they can be contemplated with gentle curiosity rather than anxiety. The grandfather paradox, where altering a past event could erase one's existence, remains a tantalizing puzzle. Yet some physicists propose that the universe may protect itself from such contradictions, allowing only histories that are self-consistent. In this view, time travel does not destroy, it harmonizes. The laws of nature are subtle, guiding the flow of events so that even if journeys through time were possible, the tapestry of reality remains unbroken. There is beauty in this restraint, a quiet assurance that the cosmos balances possibility with coherence. The butterfly effect adds another layer of contemplation. Even the tiniest gesture, a whisper of wind, a choice made in a fleeting instant, can ripple outward through the chronology of the universe. It is a reminder that every moment, no matter how small, participates in a grander pattern. We cannot physically travel backward in time, perhaps, but in memory and imagination, we revisit events constantly. The mind gently rewinds and fast-forwards, considering alternative outcomes, exploring small shifts in circumstance, and tracing the paths of possibility. Dreams, then, may serve as a personal laboratory for time travel, safe and private, where paradoxes dissolve into story and reflection. Curiously, the same mathematicians and physicists who examine wormholes and quantum loops often emphasize imagination over action. Kurt Gödel, for instance, constructed solutions to Einstein's equations that allowed closed time-like curves, paths that loop back upon themselves. These solutions exist in the calm realm of thought, challenging our understanding without demanding practical implementation. Kip Thorne calculated conditions for traversable wormholes, exploring the boundaries of space-time with precision, yet always recognizing that reality might refuse to cooperate. The study itself is a meditation, a quiet contemplation of the structures, of possibility, rather than a blueprint for immediate adventure. This delicate balance between impossibility and hope is at the heart of time travel as a concept. It reminds us that the universe is expansive and astonishing, and that the mind is capable of exploring far beyond the limitations of the body. When we imagine stepping through a temporal tunnel or circling back to witness a forgotten event, we are practicing the gentle art of curiosity. The cosmos permits such thought experiments because understanding, after all, begins with imagination. The mathematics and the philosophy exist to guide reflection, to let the mind drift along curves and loops that reality may never allow us to touch physically. Consider for a moment drifting backward to a moment of your own past. In memory, the world takes on the texture of that time, the colors, the sounds, the soft scent of the air. We may revisit a childhood playground, a quiet conversation, a fleeting gesture of kindness. We cannot alter the events, nor do we need to, for the journey itself is enough. The mind has already become a vessel for safe time travel, a gentle exploration of the past that carries the echoes of consequence without risk of paradox. Each memory is a wormhole, each thought a loop, each dream a tiny voyage across time's landscape. And then, forward travel, into the realms of anticipation, is equally soft and transformative. Imagining tomorrow, planning for years to come, envisioning futures that may or may not occur, is a kind of personal time travel, carried out entirely in the imagination. We explore multiple paths, test outcomes, and consider consequences. The paradoxes that would arise in the physical universe fade here. They exist only as gentle ripples, shaping thought rather than reality. In this way, dreaming becomes a rehearsal for living, a calm dialogue with the potential of the future. Scientific contemplation and imaginative reflection intertwine. Each equation, each hypothesis, each theoretical construct is an invitation to drift along the contours of possibility. We imagine what the universe would allow, and in doing so, we also encounter our own curiosity and wonder. The grandfather paradox, the butterfly effect, the quantum loop, all these become tools for reflection rather than sources of anxiety. They teach patience, humility, and awe. They remind us that time is not a cage, but a vast landscape, and that our minds are capable of exploring it gently, step by step, dream by dream. And so, even as we acknowledge that actual time travel may remain forever beyond our reach, we can experience it in ways that are quiet and safe. Through memory, imagination, and reflection, we slip backward and forward through time, effortlessly. Each story we read, each dream we remember, each day we anticipate becomes a personal journey along the fabric of past, present, and future. The universe may bend, stretch, and loop in ways we cannot fully perceive, yet we can follow its rhythms softly in our own inner space. Time travel, then, is not only a scientific curiosity, it is a meditation. It is an exercise in awareness, a way to perceive the delicate structure of cause and consequence. It is a way to honor memory, to imagine possibility, and to experience the fluidity of time without leaving the comfort of the present. In this practice, we are gentle explorers of our own consciousness, journeying through the infinite landscapes of history, potential, and imagination. As we drift further into the contemplation of time, the paradoxes become less frightening and more like whispers of wonder. The grandfather paradox, once a puzzle that seemed to threaten existence itself, can be seen instead as a gentle reminder that every action has consequence, and that the universe may have built-in protections to maintain harmony. Perhaps events that might unravel themselves simply cannot occur. Perhaps the cosmos subtly adjusts, ensuring that cause and effect remain consistent, even if the paths through time are complex. The thought is calming. Even in a universe vast and mysterious, order quietly persists. The butterfly effect, too, is not a warning, but a meditation. Tiny gestures can ripple outward through moments and years, altering outcomes in ways both subtle and profound. Yet the mind can explore these ripples safely. In imagination, we see what might have been, tracing each influence like a thread on a tapestry. We do not change the fabric of the real world, but we gain the soft understanding that every moment matters, that the small acts of kindness, thought, or decision are part of a larger rhythm. Time travel in this sense becomes a lesson in mindfulness, a gentle awareness of the interconnection of all things. Some physicists, captivated by these paradoxes, have suggested that the universe may contain structures that naturally allow loops without contradiction. In certain mathematical solutions, events could circle back upon themselves, forming closed curves that are consistent with the laws of physics. In these imagined landscapes, one could travel backward in time without destroying the sequence of history. The cosmos, it seems, may hold hidden paths through which careful journeys could occur. We may never walk them physically, yet our minds can wander freely. The thought is like floating along a calm river, following currents that twist and turn without turbulence. Wormholes, too, offer gentle invitation. In the equations, they connect distant points in space and time, forming bridges across both dimensions. Though the practical reality of stabilizing one remains uncertain, the visualization is serene. Picture stepping into a tunnel of softly bending light, where the walls ripple and shimmer with the weight of stars, and emerging in a place far removed, where moments flow differently. It is an experience for the mind, a voyage of curiosity, a peaceful exercise in stretching imagination. Through such thought experiments, we explore time without urgency, guided by mathematics, possibility, and quiet wonder. Even ordinary life can be a form of time travel. When we revisit a memory, we return to a distant moment with gentle clarity. When we dream, we sometimes leap forward into imagined futures. When we plan, we softly move into possibilities that have not yet arrived. Each of these experiences mirrors in miniature the great cosmic journeys that theorists contemplate. In dreams and reflection, we travel along loops, feel the stretching of moments, and explore alternative paths, all while remaining safe and present. In fiction, this interplay of paradox and possibility is rendered with vivid yet soothing imagery. Stories depict travelers meeting versions of themselves, stepping lightly through alternate timelines, witnessing the unfolding of events long past or yet to come. Within these narratives, the paradoxes exist, but they are tempered by continuity. The butterfly flutters, the grandfather smiles, the loop closes gently. The stories are not warnings. They are meditations on the elasticity of time, the flexibility of consequence, and the serenity of exploring possibility with care. The universe itself encourages patience and contemplation. Time is not a rigid path. It is a vast and supple fabric responding to mass, motion, and energy. Each choice, each breath, each heartbeat gently interacts with this fabric. The study of paradoxes, wormholes, and quantum loops is a reflection of our curiosity and humility, a recognition that the cosmos is far more subtle than our everyday perception allows. The mind, in exploring these concepts, floats along soft curves guided by thought rather than force, carried gently by the invisible currents of logic and imagination. And so, even if we can never physically step backward or forward through centuries, we can experience time travel every day in our own inner lives. We revisit memories as if stepping into familiar rooms. We anticipate futures as if walking along soft paths that have not yet fully formed. Our imagination becomes a vehicle, our thoughts a craft, and the universe a vast sea in which we float, quietly, observing, reflecting, and feeling the gentle flow of time. In this meditation, the impossible becomes comforting. Paradoxes are not dangers but invitations. Quantum loops are not puzzles but landscapes to explore. Wormholes are not threats but bridges of imagination. Dreams, memory, and reflection become the portals through which we travel, softly, safely, beautifully. We move through the fabric of time without urgency, with the awareness that every moment is a thread in the vast tapestry of existence. The soothing truth is that we are already travelers. Each day, each choice, each act of observation moves us along the currents of time. We may not bend space-time with massive engines or cross wormholes, but in thought, we can navigate its curves. Every story we tell, every memory we revisit, every plan we imagine is a gentle voyage along the loops, folds, and threads of reality. Time travel in this sense is not distant or unattainable. It is a quiet, intimate part of human consciousness. And as the mind drifts into rest, there is comfort in the awareness that the fabric of time is flexible, intricate, and full of possibility. Even if the universe prevents physical paradoxes, it allows us to explore, to imagine, and to dream. Each memory, each vision, each reflection carries us forward and backward softly like a boat on a calm river. We do not need to conquer the cosmos. We only need to float within its currents, allowing our awareness to expand gently across moments past, present, and future. So let the mind settle, aware of its capacity to wander. Picture the butterfly, the grandfather, the winding loop of time, and feel the gentle stretching of moments. Recognize that you are already moving, softly and serenely along the fabric of existence. Dreams may carry you backward or forward. Memory may unfold like a quiet journey, and anticipation may gently pull you into tomorrow. All these are forms of time travel, subtle and safe, guided by curiosity and imagination rather than force. And as sleep finally arrives, let the universe cradle you. Feel yourself floating along the gentle loops and curves of time, carried in the quiet geometry of existence. Know that paradoxes are not dangers but soft invitations to wonder. Know that possibility is not pressure, but a calm sea in which the mind may drift. And know that, in this quiet meditation, you have already begun the most profound journey of all. A voyage through the endless, flexible and beautiful fabric of time itself. Throughout history, there have been whispers, faint echoes of moments when time seemed to bend or fold upon itself, creating experiences that defy ordinary understanding. People have told stories of stepping through a doorway and finding themselves in a different decade, of wandering through familiar streets and encountering voices from another era, or of clocks and watches that suddenly ran backward, as if reality itself paused to exhale. These accounts are not presented as proof nor as instruction. They are offered gently, as glimpses into the mysteries that brush against the edges of our perception. They are moments where the universe may be teasing us, hinting that time is not as fixed as we believe. One such tale comes from the early 20th century, when a traveler in a quiet European village reportedly vanished for several hours, only to reappear decades later. He described wandering through streets lined with carriages and gas lamps, meeting people dressed in fashions long past, and hearing music that seemed familiar yet impossible. To those around him he had been gone merely hours, but to his own consciousness, he had walked through years in a single step. The story is soft around the edges, lacking the rigid detail of history, yet it carries a kind of gentle wonder. It invites us to imagine what it might be like if the boundaries of time were not absolute, if they could ripple and flex, allowing a fleeting passage across eras. Another story emerges from the sky, told by pilots and sailors whose lives are measured by hours and miles. A pilot flying in clear conditions once reported that his instruments seemed to falter. The sun lingered too long in the sky, shadows refused to move as expected, and radio signals contained voices from decades earlier. He landed safely, yet found that the world around him had shifted subtly. Records of his flight were inconsistent with reality. Clocks on the ground differed from those in his cockpit, and yet no harm was done. Such stories are rare, but they hint at an elasticity in time, a softness that might exist beneath the surface of the rigid schedules we follow each day. Even in quieter domestic settings, the phenomenon appears. Households have reported clocks that ran backward for minutes or hours, only to resume their normal rhythm without explanation. Furniture appears slightly shifted. Conversations are recalled with strange inconsistencies, and déjà vu rises like a whisper, a fleeting certainty that a moment has been lived before. These experiences, however fleeting or subtle, suggest that memory and perception may be more intertwined with the fabric of time than we normally realize. They are gentle reminders that the flow of events is not always linear, and that the universe may contain folds, overlaps, or loops that brush against human consciousness. A particularly intriguing aspect of these tales is the human response. Those who claim to have experienced time slips rarely speak of them with alarm. Instead, there is awe, a quiet reverence for the inexplicable. They describe the sensation as dreamlike, as if walking between worlds where reality softens and the ordinary rules pause. The mind perceives something beyond the usual rhythm, a momentary alignment with a greater, deeper pulse. The experience is fleeting, impossible to verify, yet deeply memorable. In recounting it, the storyteller invites others into a space of wonder, a place where imagination and perception meet at the edge of the known. Memory, too, acts as a gentle traveler. Moments from our past sometimes reappear unbidden, vivid and complete, as though they have been folded forward through years and decades. A familiar scent, a phrase spoken long ago, or a sudden recollection of a forgotten street can carry us backward in time for an instant. Déjà vu works in a similar way, giving us a fleeting sense that the present has already occurred. These subtle phenomena are small, everyday whispers from the universe, suggesting that time is not entirely firm, that its flow can be perceived in more than one direction, and that our minds may be attuned to these hidden ripples. In the soft glow of night, we can imagine ourselves walking through these legends. A doorway opens, and the familiar street transforms subtly. The architecture is slightly older. The voices carry echoes of years past. The air smells of a season we never actually experienced. We step lightly, aware that we are both observer and participant, moving along a current that exists partially outside ordinary chronology. This gentle journey is not frightening. It is contemplative. It asks us to slow our pace, to notice patterns, to feel the faint bending of reality around us. Even if it is imagination alone, the sensation is real within the mind, a calm passage through the folds of time. In literature, these stories are often framed as cautionary, fantastical, or adventurous, yet in legend they are softly reverent. They suggest that time is not a strict overseer, but a pliable companion, one that may occasionally allow brief excursions across its surface. Travelers step between years, pilots drift through hours, clocks falter in their rhythm, and memories return with startling clarity. Each tale, whether entirely true or partially imagined, carries the same message. The universe is larger, subtler, and more mysterious than we perceive, and time itself may be less rigid than the schedules and calendars we trust each day. As we reflect on these possibilities, a sense of serenity emerges. There is no urgency, no alarm, only the quiet awareness that time may contain hidden textures, soft folds that occasionally brush against human experience. Each legend is a window, a glimpse of what might be, a gentle invitation to wonder. We need not prove it nor chase it. Instead, we can let our minds wander, noticing the echoes of past and future in our thoughts, the subtle distortions in memory, the moments that feel like déjà vu. In these quiet experiences, we touch the soft pulse of the universe, feeling it gently ripple beneath the surface of daily life. There are other, quieter legends whispered in journals and letters, of people who simply vanished for days or weeks, only to return with stories of streets that had changed, of shops that no longer existed, and of faces that seemed frozen in the past. One account tells of a woman who stepped into a forest path near her home, and emerged hours later describing events and fashions from decades earlier. Her family could not verify her story, but her calm description, her vivid recollections, suggested something had shifted even briefly in the flow of time around her. The tale is neither warning nor boast. It is a gentle observation that reality may have unexpected depths, folds that occasionally allow glimpses of another era. Even modern life offers subtle hints. Pilots and sailors sometimes speak of moments when instruments faltered, yet the skies remained calm, as if time itself had loosened its grip. Travelers describe arriving somewhere to find the world slightly altered. A street that should be modern shows signs of old paving stones. A stranger's language seems an echo from centuries past. These experiences are fleeting, almost dreamlike, and often fade from memory as quickly as they arrived. Yet they linger as soft reminders that the ordinary flow of time may not be as rigid as we assume. Memory is a time traveler in its own quiet way. A forgotten song can summon an afternoon from childhood. A scent carried by the wind can return a conversation long past. A photograph, a letter, or even a fleeting phrase can ripple backward, transporting the mind across years in a single heartbeat. Déjà vu works similarly. whispering to us that perhaps we have existed in this moment before. That familiarity and anticipation are threads woven through the fabric of reality. These subtle phenomena suggest that the human mind may be sensitive to the hidden currents of time, capable of sensing echoes that others cannot see. Some of the most intriguing experiences involve ordinary objects behaving strangely. Clocks that ran backward, watches that stopped for hours, or calendars that displayed dates impossible for their surroundings, all hint at an underlying flexibility. These occurrences are often recorded casually, almost as if the universe were offering gentle nudges, teasing observers with glimpses of time's elasticity. They do not command action. They ask only that we notice, that we pause, and that we allow our imagination to drift alongside these faint anomalies. The stories are often recounted with calm wonder rather than alarm. Those who experience them describe a soft suspension, a sensation of floating outside the usual constraints of days and years. They feel the past brushing against the present, the future whispering softly through possibilities, and they sense for an instant that the universe is far more layered than our everyday perception allows. Even when the events cannot be verified, the feeling remains real, a meditation on the subtle rhythms of time. Imagine yourself walking slowly through one of these moments. A doorway, a forest path, or a quiet street becomes a portal. You notice the air feels slightly different. The light bends with a gentle strangeness, and familiar faces carry the faint imprint of memory, not entirely your own. You move softly, aware that you are participating in something delicate, a brief brush with time's hidden folds. There is no fear, only calm observation, a sense of reverence for a universe that allows such small miracles to appear fleetingly along our paths. Even in literature and folklore, these stories are treated as mysteries rather than warnings. Travelers encounter echoes of the past, ghosts of moments already lived, and sometimes glimpses of futures not yet arrived. The legends are full of reverence for the invisible hand of time, acknowledging its power without suggesting mastery. They encourage contemplation, imagination, and patience. We are reminded that we exist not on a single, unbroken line of events, but on a gently shifting surface, where moments can fold, overlap, and ripple in subtle, beautiful ways. Reflecting on these stories can inspire a quiet meditation. Each memory, each flash of déjà vu, each imagined excursion into time reminds us that our lives are threaded into a vast and intricate tapestry. The past is never entirely lost. The future is never wholly out of reach. In sleep, in dream, in reflective thought, we slip softly along the currents of time. Every heartbeat, every sigh, every small gesture participates in this quiet flow. Though we may never step through decades in an instant, our consciousness can drift backward and forward, exploring the possibilities without danger or disruption. And so, the timeless legends, the vanished travelers, the clocks that reversed, and the fleeting déjà vus all serve as gentle invitations. They invite us to notice, to imagine, to let the mind wander freely across the subtle folds of reality. They remind us that time may be softer, more flexible, and more wondrous than our calendars and schedules suggest. In this awareness we find serenity. We find that even as the world ticks steadily forward, our minds can explore the hidden pathways, the soft echoes, and the quiet overlaps where past, present, and future intermingle. As sleep draws near, imagine yourself stepping lightly through one of these temporal folds. A whisper of air carries you backward to a memory, forward to a vision, and sidewise to a moment yet unseen. You are safe, calm, and carried along the gentle currents of time. Each thought, each recollection, each sensation is a soft passage, a personal exploration of the universe's hidden rhythms. And in this quiet meditation you drift along, aware that the tapestry of time is vast, mysterious, and infinitely gentle. Time surrounds us, flowing like a river we can see but cannot touch. Yet beneath the currents of past and future, there is a quiet place where all movement slows. The present. The present is soft and immediate, yet it is often overlooked. Our minds wander tracing the echoes of yesterday, imagining the contours of tomorrow, and in the process we sometimes forget the gentle heartbeat of now. But this moment, the breath in your chest, the faint hum of life around you, is the only time that truly exists. It is the space in which consciousness blooms, the quiet cradle of awareness. Philosophers through the ages have whispered of this truth. Ancient thinkers in gardens and temples suggested that the mind becomes free only when it stops chasing what is past and what may come. The present moment, they said, is like a soft, clear pool. When the mind rests in it, undisturbed by regret or anticipation, reflection and perception merge. There is serenity here, a gentle light that illuminates experience without judgment. Awareness is fully awake yet calm, like the surface of a lake reflecting the sky without ripple. Monks and sages built practices around this understanding. Through quiet meditation, careful attention to breath, and the slow, deliberate passage of daily rituals, they trained themselves to inhabit the present fully. Every step, every movement, every glance became an anchor. When washing hands or walking along a path, the mind is invited to notice the sensation, the texture, the subtle shifting of balance and weight. This mindfulness is not effortful but soft and patient. It is a gentle immersion in the ongoing now, a recognition that the past and future are imagined, while this breath, this heartbeat, is immediate and true. Even in the modern world, there are moments when the present asserts itself quietly. The wind brushes softly against skin, carrying the scent of flowers, earth, or rain. Light glints across a window pane or ripples across a pond. The mind may attempt to chase what was said yesterday or what might be spoken tomorrow. Yet the world itself presses only lightly against now. In these fleeting instants, consciousness is a delicate vessel, holding nothing but the direct experience of being. The world is soft, alive, and unhurried. Einstein himself contemplated time not as a strict sequence but as a flexible dimension. He said that past, present, and future are illusions, stubborn and beautiful ones, woven together in a way that the human mind interprets as linear, but which is more subtle and expansive. In physics, events do not exist solely in sequence. They exist as part of a larger fabric. The sensation of now is an intimate brush against this fabric, a fleeting moment in which perception and reality converge. The past is memory, the future is expectation, but the present is experience. This is where life unfolds, quietly and inexorably. To inhabit the present gently is to let go of clinging. It is not an abandonment of thought, but a soft noticing of it. Thoughts of what has passed or what may come arise and fall away, like clouds drifting across a sky that remains steady and clear. The body breathes, the heart beats, the senses perceive, and all of it happens within the gentle pulse of now. There is no rush, no judgment, no need to measure the moment. It simply is, and by noticing it, we are carried softly into its rhythm. Imagine for a moment feeling the rise and fall of your chest. Each inhale brings in the present. Each exhale releases the past. The mind may wander, but the body always returns, guided by this gentle rhythm. The sun moves across the sky, shadows shift, and yet for this instant the mind is still. Awareness is full and soft, like sunlight spilling through a window onto a quiet floor. Nothing exists outside this gentle unfolding of now, and within it there is infinite space for peace, reflection, and presence. Even the smallest sensory experiences anchor us here. The taste of tea, the warmth of a blanket, the faint hum of distant life, all remind us that we are alive in this precise breath, this delicate point between before and after. To attend to these details is to enter fully into the fabric of the present, noticing texture, sound, color, and feeling without judgment or expectation. Time becomes not a chain, but a soft field in which each instant contains its own completeness, its own quiet wholeness. In literature and philosophy, this theme is echoed repeatedly. Writers and thinkers suggest that the mind, when fully attuned to the present, experiences a subtle timelessness. Action becomes effortless, perception becomes heightened, and a sense of grace emerges. Past regrets lose their weight, future worries soften, and there is only the gentle flow of attention. This is not mere poetry. It is the practice of being alive in the only moment that is ever real. The gentle present asks us to notice the small rhythms of life. The sound of a bird in the distance, the rustle of leaves in a soft breeze, the warmth of sunlight on skin. Each sensation is an invitation to inhabit now. Our minds often drift to memory or anticipation, but these gentle anchors bring awareness back to the immediate experience. To touch, to hear, to feel, even for a few seconds, is to participate in the unfolding moment. Each breath is a bridge between what was and what will be, yet it exists fully in itself, complete and sufficient. Philosophers and spiritual teachers have long emphasized this quiet truth. They taught that enlightenment is not found in accumulated knowledge, nor in plans or regrets, but in the simple act of being fully present. A monk walking a garden, noticing the texture of each stone, the curve of each leaf, finds a depth of understanding that transcends time. The mind, anchored in the present, touches something eternal, a soft continuity that exists beyond the constructs of past and future. Here there is peace. Here life is neither rushed nor postponed. It is simply experienced. The fabric of time itself can be imagined as a vast woven tapestry. Past and future are threads, stretching in patterns beyond our perception. Yet the present is the space where consciousness intersects with this tapestry. It is the point where perception rests, where awareness touches reality directly. Einstein described the past, present, and future as illusions, not because they do not exist, but because their distinctions are relative, mutable, and ultimately dependent on perspective. To exist fully in now is to glimpse the quiet depth of this reality. To float within the weave of moments without resistance, without haste. Imagine for a moment the sensation of floating gently on this fabric. Each thread is a possibility, a memory, a future that could be, yet you rest lightly upon them, neither clinging nor striving. The weave supports you, holds you, and carries you along in perfect balance. The mind can wander softly, but always returns to this place of gentle awareness. The universe does not demand anything more than noticing, simply inviting you to inhabit the eternal now that exists everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. In this state, even ordinary actions acquire a quiet magnificence. Pouring a cup of tea becomes a meditation, the steam curling like smoke through a sunbeam. Walking down a corridor becomes a soft exploration, each footstep a gentle rhythm in the present. The ordinary observed fully reveals its depth. There is no need to chase the past or anticipate the future. There is only this gentle engagement with life as it flows, a soft recognition that all we ever have is this single precious moment. The beauty of inhabiting the present is that it is timeless. When fully immersed, the mind experiences something that transcends the ordinary march of seconds. Awareness stretches, softens, and expands. We feel connected not only to ourselves but to the currents of existence around us. Time becomes a pliable, quiet fabric in which we float gently, free of anxiety or obligation. There is no rush, no loss, no hurry, only the soft, eternal unfolding of this instant. Even thought itself can be a bridge to presence. Reflection, without attachment, can reveal patterns and rhythms in our own consciousness. Observing thoughts without clinging, noticing memories and anticipations without grasping allows the mind to rest in now. The experience is soft and continuous, a gentle flow of perception in which the universe can be observed without judgment, and life can be experienced without urgency. This is the essence of mindfulness meditation and quiet awareness, the recognition that all else, past regrets, future hopes is background, while the present is luminous, alive, and immediate. As sleep approaches, this practice of awareness becomes even more profound. Lying quietly, noticing the gentle rise and fall of the chest, the rhythm of breath, the soft sensations of body and mind, we are drawn fully into this moment. All else recedes. Time as a rigid line dissolves. Past and future fade into soft echoes. What remains is the gentle now, a quiet, complete, self-sufficient presence. You are here. You are awake. You are alive. And in this soft awareness there is infinite serenity. So let the mind rest soft and unhurried. Feel yourself floating lightly in the fabric of time, held by its quiet rhythm. The universe continues its flow, threads of past and future weaving silently around you, but you are suspended gently, fully present. Each breath, each heartbeat, each blink is a reminder of the eternal now. There is no need to reach for what has passed nor to anticipate what is to come. You exist completely, perfectly, and softly in this singular instant. And as you drift further into rest, let this thought accompany you. You are floating in the fabric of time. And for this moment you are timeless. The world may continue its march, moments may pass, but here now you exist in perfect stillness. Each sensation, each perception, each gentle awareness carries you through the soft eternity of the present. You are calm, you are whole, you are fully here. And for this moment that is enough.